what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Tech Live. And today I'm here as Clay Reed with Johnny Petz and James Lucarelli, and we are going to tell you some awesome updates about this new camera system and all the great things that are happening here. So we're going to talk about updates to V-RAPTOR and updates to KOMODO, those new firmwares. We're talking about our new 2 terabyte cards. We're talking about the brand new Red Control Pro that's in beta. And we're talking about some updates to the DSMC3 accessories availabilities. So guys, I'm pretty excited about the updates to the cameras. How about you?
No, yeah, super excited. I mean, yeah, so end of last year, we had a couple of updates come out for KOMODO and V-RAPTOR. Obviously, we go through our usual kind of beta process and we get lots of feedback and kind of go from there. And I think James is going to take us through what some of the updates are that we're going to look through today.
Yeah, I'm not going to name off all of them, but I think the ones that have me most excited is additional Apple ProRes support. We're talking being able to do a 4K Quad 4 ProRes in your Raptor. I'm also very excited about things like Timelapse, Undercranking, custom frame rates. Now, these are things that are both benefits to both KOMODO and Raptor, and we'll get into a little bit more on the actual use cases and why this is beneficial to you as either someone that owns one of these cameras or potentially we're looking into them.
Awesome. So yeah, diving in, I think ProRes, good place to start. It was one of the initial features for V-RAPTOR specifically that was, hey, on my DSMC2, I was able to shoot proxies, 4K, 2K, and 422 or 422 HQ. But with V-RAPTOR now, we've got our standalone ProRes mode and also our ProRes proxy mode. Now, the cool new thing about the standalone ProRes mode, through a reboot, you get access to 444XQ and 444. Up to 120 FPS, which is just super cool, opening up to different kinds of projects and requirements that we'll touch on in a moment. ProRes Proxy, allowing you to record a 422 HQ or 422 or LT file up to 60 FPS alongside your RAW file, which is super handy for quick turnaround projects as well. You are also able to burn in your lookup table or just go straight log, depending on the speed of your project. Now, I think some of the big use cases just for a standalone ProRes in general, as you know, I think all of us here, we like to shoot RAW 99.9% of the time, but every now and again there is a post-production house or a job that they have a ProRes requirement, and it might be a 422 or it might be a 444. That could be for post-workflow considerations or potentially cost sometimes, and that's where this benefit really kind of comes in handy, especially if you've got a quick turnaround project, broadcast, events, you want to get something up on social media really, really quickly. Sometimes just a nice lightweight ProRes file can kind of be the way to go. And I mean, guys, you know, we've all been using this beta for a while now. What have you guys been using it for?
It's been amazing. I think one of the things that's interesting about it too is that if there's something in your life that maybe isn't your full-time gig, that's just a passion or something that is really based just on social media or something like that, the ability to get the full, like, super sampling of the sensor in this smaller format file that I can just quickly move around and do a nice little edit and throw it up from my phone. Things like that, to me, have been a place where I'm like, it's great to have proxies back in here.
Or for myself, you know, there are times where I'm working for another client and their deliverable is a 4K Quad 4 ProRes, and they don't want to hear about Red Code RAW. They want to do it exactly the way they have it, and it may be something that's a national standard where myself or the DIT doesn't get to dictate it. So if I want to get paid today, I need to be able to shoot with all of my sensor, and as soon as I leave, deliver that Quad 4 or that ProRes, and it's a really great way to, once again, either we talked about super sampling right there in camera or shoot LQ, and then you could always go ahead and do that later in post.
No, exactly. I mean, one of the interesting things here is that it's quite a good showcase for Red Code in kind of how efficient it kind of can be in a number of situations, because just looking at some kind of runtime numbers, so 8K 17:9 on a 660 gig card, you're looking at MQ 33 minutes and around 54 minutes for LQ. Whereas if you go into 4K ProRes 17:9 mode, XQ, you're looking at around 47 minutes. So a little bit less than the 8K LQ. Yeah. And doing a little bit of testing, kind of the team here, you know, that 8K LQ through the downsampling you can do kind of in post-production is a little bit sharper than that kind of in-camera downscaled one. A little bit differences there in kind of the noise, texture, those kind of things. So it's definitely something that is very, very close between them. But again, the benefits of the RAW, supersede, I think, kind of shooting a baked-in ProRes file. But again, it's just nice to kind of have those options for those jobs, especially having a 422 proxy, to speed up if you're a single shooter, you can get those files straight away out of there, or a quick and easy edit file for some cool things we'll talk about later about trying to dump those ProRes files over a network really, really quickly, which we'll kind of touch on. But yeah, super cool that ProRes is in there. It does require a reboot to go into the ProRes only mode, and it is now available in the latest update. Which, speaking of more updates, I think, James, you're going to take us away with Timelapse.
Yeah, and I think the key thing to keep in mind here is that these are other additional narrative tools that have been added to your camera at no additional cost, right? So when you're shooting that day scene and you want to go to a night scene and you want to do that quick conveyance of time, a time lapse is a really great tool. And if you didn't see our previous solitary series, we did a whole one dedicated on time lapse and advanced recording, and that was on our DSMC2 cameras. But a lot of those same principles carry over here. Right? Interval, changing our interval is how we're going to compress that time, and our shutter is how we're going to dictate how much blur or movement we're going to see in that. So I'm going to give you a couple examples here, and I think the real benefit here is, as you can see here, and I'll make this a little bit bigger for you here, this very first time lapse is 1 frame every 2 seconds, and it goes over from a sunrise. This next one is where I shot everything at 24 frames per second and just sped it up 900% in post. And lastly, here's an example where I did 1 frame every 4 seconds. Now, the difference between all 3 of these time lapses was the massive difference in the file size. And by using a different interval, like I'm going to show you here, whereas an example I did with KOMODO, this is 1 frame every 10 seconds. So the time is that much more sped up. I'm shooting less gigs than maybe if I just did a traditional motion here. And notice that I'm shooting here from about mid-afternoon to evening. I would not be able to do that on the same card if I was just doing traditional recording. We would be limited by whatever the card capacity is, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But I think that's the incredible thing here, is this is a tool for both your KOMODO and your Raptor. You're using the same lens, the same look, the same LUT. And Clay and I were talking about it. It's just a really great vehicle when we need to go to that next scene where we can go ahead, set the camera down, keep it all in that same look, same grade, and then have that different vehicle for our tool.
I think it's also cool because it's in one file as well. I remember doing time lapses on kind of DSLRs before and having like 10,000 files and things can go wrong. One photo gets missing. Having it in one self-contained file makes it super easy to send to people as well, which is super neat. One other thing I think is pretty cool is the frame limit. I was talking to a friend about if you've got a period of time in a film, like, hey, I've got 10 seconds to film my documentary. I need a 10-second documentary. That's going to be however long, how many frames. You can limit how many frames you record in a time lapse and get a perfect length time lapse, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that stuff is so great. And it's such a unique tool to change your perspective on the world. Playing with time in that way, for me, is a great way to capture different character in people as well. And so when you do interval time lapses, one thing that you kind of lose is natural human movement looks kind of stuttered because you're capturing in these chunks of time spread out. And so I actually really like that Undercrank is in there as well, because in skateboarding, we do a bunch of these cool sort of character portraits that go along with the footage, and we do them often in time lapse. And so this is one I did to my buddy the other day, and it's just us skating around. But I just love the energy and feeling that this type of a shot can create and bring just a little bit different style to a project that you're working on. And like James said, without switching cameras, like that's a part for me, is that I love to have all these different little tools I get to use. Even if I only get to use them occasionally, it's really great to have them housed in the same camera so that no matter what I want to accomplish, I can just pick up my camera and start going and not be thinking about, oh, do I need to swap my setup for this reason or that reason? It's to me, I'm like, I was waiting for this. I've been real ready.
Undercrank has so many cool things you can do, like car work, drop down to 22 FPS, speed that car up when maybe you shouldn't be speeding, or a fight sequence, or something really surreal where, maybe someone's had a bit too much to drink. You want to get this weird feeling of them stumbling around on a snorri cam or something. There's so many cool things you can do with Undercrank.
Yeah, totally agree.
And I saw one of the questions came in about how long of run times, and Johnny gave you a great example here where you can actually limit and say 2,000 frames, and you can figure out that's about a 10-second clip here. Or the other benefit is put it into that mode and then look right on the side of the camera or your phone. It will update. When I'm doing time-lapse mode, I typically see 2 hours and 17 minutes. It's something there where you have because we're only doing 1 frame, not 24 frames a second, you're going to have much longer total record times.
Definitely.
I think speaking of elongating time, what about slowing down time then, James, with this crazy 8:1 mode?
Yep, and what we're going to be talking about here, and you can see it even right now in the stream, I've limited my vertical resolution here, and with red, that allows you to get higher frame rates. We're now talking about limiting that vertical resolution drastically and doing a 8 times as wide by 1 tall, and what you're going to see here is we get to get an incredibly fast frame rate. This is 4K, 1,000 frames per second, and what you're actually seeing here is my propane gas in my fireplace igniting here at 1,000 frames per second. And Clay and I were talking about how you can industrialize this shot by maybe putting a ruler or some 1-inch corkboard in the background so you could easily see how fast that flame is traveling within a given second, and could be a really great resource tool for your commercial shoot or for any product shoots or anything like that.
Yeah, I love the way that looks, man. It's so much fun to have that drastic slow motion. It's like you never see things like that in the real world. And Johnny gave us all the best idea the other day. Is, what if you stack them? Like multiple images going at once. Like there's just so many different creative ways you could actually bring to this. Like that, it's such a cool thing to see time at that small of an interval.
And
also, just to be clear, this is Raptor only, not on Komodo.
Yeah.
So
good catch.
Great point here. And remember, with these new frame rates, with the time-lapse option, you're not able to select a frame rate outside of the max frame rates, right? If I wanted to undercrank and do a very deliberate 22 frames per second for that car chase, for that fight scene, you do have to be within the limitations of your frame rates. It's not going to magically go outside of that. But yes, great point there. And also just back to, maybe some of the other cameras you might use for extremely high frame rates, that's a different camera system and has a completely different way of recording. I'm now using the one that I was using for the narrative piece and just easily using a preset, switching it into that mode, getting that incredibly high frame rate shot or time-lapse shot, and going right back into my normal shooting in the same sequence with the same LUT, with the same lens and camera.
Totally.
Definitely. I think moving on to some of the other updates we're going to speak about today, another really exciting one for me is the 5 gigabits per second USB-C adapter support update. So this is really cool. So those of you who have shot with Komodo, you would be familiar. You can use a USB-C to 1 gig Ethernet adapter, and on Komodo and on V-RAPTOR, you can do the same. You get a simple adapter. James is showing one there. Plug it into the back, and you've just got a simple 1 gig Ethernet connection. Well, with the latest update on V-RAPTOR, you can now use 5 gig adapters, which is super cool. Opens up a whole world of possibilities for essentially faster offloads and also uploads if you're uploading stuff to the camera. But being able to download media from the camera at around 350 megasecond, 350 megabytes a second, that's around 30 minutes for a 660 gig card, whereas it used to be hours on a 1 gig card. It just speeds things up and really opens up to a whole new kind of world. If you're shooting ProRes proxies, you could just be downloading just the proxy files really, really quickly and leaving the RAW as it is, have a connection down to the DIT, hardwired in, and just really ideal for those situations where maybe the camera can't be accessed or the card can't be accessed very easily. If a camera is left somewhere, and maybe in the rafters, and you're shooting all day, formatting the card, filling it up, maybe trap cams, research cameras where you don't want the camera to be physically touched because it's going to mess up alignment or something. You can have a direct connection to the camera, upload, download the RAW, download the ProRes files really, really quickly. Clay, I think you were saying for the red text, you've got a pretty cool setup just to download all the files to a server, right?
Yep, I just got this all going, and I'm actually now doing the red text where it's all tied in to a 10 gig switcher that's going into my computer that's connected to my server. So essentially what I can do is I can leave my camera positions fixed, right? The camera can just stay there. It's wired up. One card just lives in there, right? And it's one that I know that I won't overfill. Hopefully I hit my lines right, but most of the time it just lives in there. And then I go to the computer, download the footage, enter it into the server, and then I can get right to work. And it's, for me, I'm like, just looking at all these different little ways that I can be so much more efficient in the things that I'm doing, especially with the condition of these red techs, because it is essentially a fixed camera position within a set, right? It makes things a lot easier. And I think there's other places, though, that people can start looking at their workflows and kind of investing in this sort of idea, even just on regular sets. It's a super useful tool.
I mean, obviously, a card reader, our Angelbird card reader, I think James has one there, is definitely going to be faster. But just having this option again, it's really, really cool. And just to give you guys some details on kind of adapters to kind of look at, this is one of the adapters that we've kind of tested and validated with the camera. It's a QNAP adapter. Obviously, if you've got a 10 gig switch, you can plug straight into it. Or if you're going direct to a computer, you're going to need 2 of those. And currently, this adapter only has Windows support. Mac, especially if you're on the new M1 chips, it seems like a lot of these 5 gig adapters aren't supported on M1 Macs yet. So your mileage may vary. Definitely check the adapter and its support for Mac devices. And also, different applications have different optimizations as well. So a lot of them are really meant for 1 gig Ethernet connections. So if you're looking to maximize a 5 gig connection, using something like LFTP is a really good tool that is much faster and more optimized for moving files very, very quickly over the network. And for those of you that are into networking, you can select the MTU, which is basically the maximum transmission unit. So you can set that in camera, and that can basically further help you optimize your network, as depending on how many devices you have on the network and just your network in general, the speed may vary on that. So you may get a little bit below 300 or somewhere around that 350 or potentially a little bit higher depending on your kind of network setup. But yeah.
And I'm really excited for using this in live events, right? If the camera positions are fixed at the 15, at the 10-yard lines or wherever they are, and you get either the game-winning highlight or whatever the shot you need, you're not even going to have to run your card back to the DIT. If the DIT is connected to your camera, he or she could download that 2K proxy, get that going right there, almost in near real time. We were saying almost in real time with that 5 gigabit adapter here. And that's just great because you would always have the raw to revert back to for the highlight show. And really great use case there. And it keeps me from running up and down the beach with a card in my hand. And I can just say, go ahead and pull the clip from the mag yourself.
And then one final update before we start getting onto some of the cool accessories and the apps is for those virtual production guys. So sensor sync shift has now been implemented into V-RAPTOR. So this is really cool as it basically allows you to sync and offset the incoming Genlock signal, basically allowing you to accurately calibrate your camera to the LED wall that you're working with to make sure you're capturing the full frame, as sometimes there's a little bit of flicker, or in those situations, find it a little bit tricky to get it perfectly synced, and it allows you to basically offset it in microseconds. So I can kind of show you on the camera over here. So you can now assign it as a preset to a button. So up here, I've got my sensor sync shift buttons, so I can in real time be looking at my screen and making these adjustments, which is great because in a virtual production environment, you don't necessarily want to be doing it on the Genlock device or the processor itself. And that's because the processor itself may not be able to do it to individual outputs. So you may end up adjusting all of your cameras at the same time, whereas it may only be one camera that's kind of having this sensor sync shift issue. So as you can see here, we can come in, we can change our sync shift. So I can come in and let's just do it by a few hundred here. So I'm going to come in. Let's just do it by, let's do it by 200 here. And you'll see it will give you a calculation of how much in microseconds that has then shifted you. And then, eventually you're up and running on that virtual production wall, as they are all getting very, very popular very, very quickly.
Yeah, and what a complicated workflow to begin with. Anywhere you can fit in little helpers, little time savers, it seems like a great option to do it, just because, man, dipping my toe in that stuff, it's very complicated and very cool. But anywhere we can...
Sorry, Clay.
No, I was just going to say, anywhere you can make a shortcut, it feels like I'd take it.
One other thing that was really cool is Brompton, the guys do a lot of really cool frame remapping. So that's where you have 2 cameras getting a separate feed, and the LED wall is flickering so fast that one camera sees one perspective, the other sees one perspective. And again, it's not just so much solving a flicker issue or a sync issue, it can solve to get both cameras looking at a completely independent frame on that LED panel. So again, a lot of creative benefits there as well.
And I've been on that set as we're trying to dial it in, and if you're just that 1 microsecond off, what you wouldn't do to just be able to shift it like this. And we definitely love the feedback, and thank you to everyone that's been working with our team here, because what you are seeing is that being implemented right there in camera. So
Totally.
So I think, Clay, next up we have the app.
Oh, all right, let's go. Look at how awesome this is. Just right here, right at my fingertips. I can adjust the different cameras. So here's my A camera that we're all watching right now. I can look at my B camera that we're watching all at the same time, control them together, right? So I could start recording, or I could sync different settings on here, and then it's going to tell me when my settings aren't in sync. This is just a hugely beneficial tool. We're calling this Red Control Pro, and it's currently in beta. And it doesn't even just work on your iPad, it also works on a computer. So I think Johnny's got it queued up, and he can run us through some of those other features too.
Yes, I can. So as we said, Red Control, the normal app available for iOS and Android, very, very popular, allowing you to control your Komodo or your V-RAPTOR, but only a single camera at a time. So working with Mikhail, who has done the Red Control app and also the previous apps that he's done for DSMC2 cameras, and he's just gone crazy in this version. He's just come in and so many cool features. So obviously, as Clay said there, the ability to control and view multiple cameras in a Mac or iOS in an iPad format is super cool. So looking down at some of the functions down here, these are essentially all the functions that I can add and link together. So I've got a number. Basically, I can pick from anything. I can link CDL values, shutter modes, aperture lists, tools, all of these things, and I can link them to a camera. So, for example, false color. I can have both of them ping on false color. This one's got the video mode on. This one's got the exposure mode on. I can come in and change that. If I want both of my white balances to match, we can come in and set these both to 5/6. We can then turn over very quickly. Both of them are now turning over. We can now cut that. We can format the card should we want to. Let's come in and let's turn our LUT off. Or we can come in and actually change the LUT across all the cameras. This could be something whereby actually we're moving to a different scene. I need to go from my daylight LUT to my interior day LUT. I'm going to come in here and put a black and white LUT instantly on all of these cameras. I can come in and still control each camera individually. So I can still come in and go into my Komodo, for instance, come in, control the monitoring menus or anything like that. Basically, it's like having an unlimited amount of Red Control apps just built into one UI, and kind of gives you this primary replica kind of use case if you're working in a broadcast situation, maybe an event. Maybe you've got all cameras cabled through Ethernet, and you've just got a video operator sat in the den, and they can control all of the cameras from this. If you didn't want to use something like a Scarhoy, or basically, kind of like a poor man's Scarhoy in many aspects there. You can come in, FTP access, so I can simply come in and connect to the camera here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There we go. Don't steal my password for my Komodo, please. But at that point, you can come
Hopefully
in.
that's not your bank password.
Yeah. So at that point, I can come in. I can browse all of my files. If I make my window a little bit bigger here, I can come in, upload, download, see the media. If I come into the media, it's going to show me. There we go. There's the clip I just turned over on a bit earlier. I can download that file if I wanted to. It's just such a cool app. And there's so much that Mikhail has been putting in, thanks to the feedback of everybody who's been testing it. So one feature that he's put in very, very quickly was the ability to rotate the display. So if you're doing some social media stuff, or just where the camera's at a weird angle and you aren't able to flip the image in camera or through some sort of post-processing, you can come in and do this through the app as well, which is really, really nice. And it's independent from all the other cameras as well. So awesome app. Clay, I know you've been playing with the iPad app a load. What do you think of it so far?
It's so great. I really see, so production usually has a router for the production, right? And that's spreading internet or ways for people to connect. But I've been bringing a router specifically for a camera team, just so we can get all the cameras up on a network, no matter where we're at. And I can go through and say, oh, great, this looks great next to this. Are we doing color matching? Are we making sure that we're compensating for different lens choices? Having one place to look at your multiple cameras saves so much time. And it's not the same sort of thing with Video Village where you're swapping inputs or pressing buttons to toggle between things or having multiple monitors that are kind of a pain. I can pick this up with me and go somewhere else and be, talking to someone, hey, we need to work through this technical problem with the SFX team, but camera stuff's going on at the same time. I can stand there and talk to SFX and be yep, no, the cameras do look great. Please make the explosion bigger. Like just all these different opportunities for me that it's opened up in my workflow to be able to access the cameras at the same time. And I can only imagine for DITs on really big sets that have a ton of cameras and very technical processes with really awesome DPs who are much more exacting than I am.
I mean, that was a question that we actually just had come in terms of how many cameras does this app support? And in truth, Mikhail hasn't actually had enough cameras to be able to see what the limit of this is. I mean, certainly in terms of 10 cameras, that would definitely be possible. It obviously depends on your infrastructure. So if all the cameras are on Wi-Fi and one's a little bit further away from the Wi-Fi router, things are going to struggle. So obviously wiring in through Ethernet is going to give you a great setup. But the cameras I had set up here, they were all over Wi-Fi. So it really does depend on your infrastructure setup.
And I can see this being used greatly for the live events stuff, right? When it's where crew is limited, we have one person checking multiple cameras. The bane of our existence is one camera being slightly off or colored from the rest of them. And when we go to do our multi-camera edit, it just makes our life that much more difficult. Clay or Johnny or myself or anyone using this app can look in one place. And we said it earlier or hinted it earlier. If you're on the network, you could theoretically be in another place, not even at that location. I would still want you to be on that location or someone too. But for protocol reasons or travel reasons, or maybe the big boss just doesn't want to travel, you can get them on the network. And as long as they're on the network, this is going to be something that they're going to be able to see and control.
Totally.
I mean, I think speaking of those people in high data situations,
I
think the new 2 terabyte, let's get on to the accessories and some of the new hardware.
Oh, man. This guy right here, I am real excited about. I shoot a ton and I really like shooting high frame rate. And when doing that, you often fill up cards, especially if they're lower capacity. And so having a high capacity option for me is like so exciting. And I know that for a lot of people, they're going like, well, what's the difference, right? Like okay, you've got a 660 and a 2 terabyte. And technically, physically, there is no difference, right? It's the same hardware between the two. But because of over provisioning in the earlier phase, we made the 660, or Angelbird and us collaborated on the 660. And that one is created for great long-term durability, as well as operating outside some normal temperatures. It's really going to help you for durability and that. And I think, Johnny, you've been playing with these for a little while, right? Kind of testing some of that stuff.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, like when we went ahead and decided to move forward with going for a 2 terabyte, it was high capacity with excellent durability was always the priority. It was making sure that we meet the standards that we expect from a card being used in a RED camera. And they've gone through the exact same testing as the 660 in the exact same conditions, all of the operating temperatures that the camera can work with. It's been tested, and it's basically built to the same standard of a known card for RED users, and that's the Minimag. It's been used on tons of high-end productions for years. Clay's got cards coming out the wazoo, just cards that have been used for a long time, and that's really what we wanted to build this card to be based around. All the same pre-record functions, all the same high frame rate. It's just the fact that the 660 is now more of a specialty card. The 2 terabyte is now our standard media. That's what's going to be used in all of the packs. And as we talked about earlier, as Clay and James said, a 660 is maybe a card where if you have a camera left in a remote location and that's the only card that's ever going to live in that camera, it's going to be formatted day in, day out. There isn't going to be a cycle of cards going in there. That could be a consideration for research, remote cameras, maybe live events, potentially some rental situations, although we do feel the 2 terabyte is going to meet the needs for most people. But again, just also, as Clay said, those operating temperatures. Now, if you're going outside of the operating temperatures of the camera, which is 0C to 40C or 32 Fahrenheit to 104 Fahrenheit, maybe you're going to 50 degrees Celsius, a really hot environment. That's where this over-provisioned card could be more suitable to those environments, generally outside of where the camera would potentially be used. So super cool for lots of different environments. And I mean, run times, that's the big thing. HQ, 24 FPS, 8K 17:9, hour and 15 minutes. MQ, just about 2 hours at 1 hour 50. And LQ, ridiculous, basically 3 hours of 8K on a 2 terabyte card is insane.
Oh, interviews, multi-hour interviews, right? Like, I mean, it's a huge thing that I do some side documentary work, and it can ruin an interview. You can be in the middle of the best answer, the best question, the best thing ever. You're so like, I love this, and you run out of media, and you're like, could you stop crying for a second?
Hold that
and then
tear.
Cry
Let me
up,
change the
and
card.
then I'm gonna switch cards, and then start the crying after that would be great. It's like there's sometimes you can't cut, and having that roll time up near 3 hours is like, come on, that's amazing.
And there is a balance of, hey, that's too much on one card, and that's always different for everyone's own personal workflow. But for myself, when I want to shoot high frame rates and it's maybe an event where I can't dictate or start or stop, it was very challenging me to put a card and see 15, 17 minutes. When I see 30 or 40 minutes, that allows me to know that I'm going to shoot for over an hour. This card isn't going to die mid whatever I'm shooting. And that's for myself. I'm going to be leaning towards that 2 terabyte option and having 3 times the capacity with one card. And as someone that just shot about 6 terabytes in about 13 days, yeah, I would have much rather done that with 3 cards than 19 other directories. But that's where everyone's workflow is different. I myself was carrying in 1 card. That was the one difference.
Totally.
I mean, it's one of those things where I've even seen customers so far where they've been buying a mix of them. Hey, I'm going to get a couple of 2 terabytes and a couple of 660s. Maybe if I hire the camera out, or if I'm doing different types of work, I'm going to use my 660s. But for my more day-to-day work, 2 terabytes, narrative, those kind of things, that's where the 2 terabyte kind of comes into it. And both of them have the same warranty. Both of them get free data recovery. So that's how much we're standing behind both of these cards. And Angelbird are standing behind these cards, that extended warranties and obviously free data recovery.
Right. And the durability thing, it's like when you think about, okay, so the 2 terabyte card is as durable as a mini mag. I've been shooting on this mini mag for over 5 years, like realistically. And so it's kind of, it's great that we have this specialty card and this high capacity card, and both of them are bulletproof. Like it's not something where you're going to have to be concerned over, oh, is something going to happen to my card? It's just better options.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And Johnny mentioned it, same hardware, and it's the same exact price as well. So really, I could see a bevy of cards in one production, right? You might have for different use cases. Yep.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I think moving on to our last bit of accessories that we'll be talking about is the long-awaited accessories for V-RAPTOR. We're getting ever so closer. Some bits have started to ship, top handles are going, but this is the full accessory package. I wanted to show you guys, hey, it exists, it's real. And Clay, I mean, you've been the first person to get hands-on with it. What are you making of it so far?
It's so amazing. It is as amazing as it looks. It's beautifully built. It's rock solid. It's all the things that I usually do with my camera anyway. If you see my Monstro setup that I've been taking around for years to do documentary work, it's essentially this one with an extra handle on the side. It's so similar, and being able to move the monitor up onto that little pogo peg, like there's just so many different things that I have been very, very excited about with this setup. I got to pull my bricks out. All that stuff's coming. But, man, it's really, really nice to be able to like have it pre-designed to be in that production environment. It feels very obviously catered to set work that we're all doing all the time. So I'm just like, I'm blown away with how well they work. Oh, I want to show one more.
Oh, hold on. Let me get you back up.
We got to get the light. We got to get the light. Here,
that's been everyone's feature that I've seen.
I know.
Using it so far.
It's so amazing. Like the full dark studio. Where's my buttons? Oh, they're right there, just nicely under our well-lit LED. Sorry. geeking over this thing.
Nice and discreet, and for those concert shoots or anything like that where your screen is illuminating too much and wrecking the horror scene that you're trying to shoot, it's really nice to just be able to discreetly go in there, make whatever change, not affect the director, not affect whatever's being monitored there. And I love your full-size battery on there just for the ability to counterbalance your lens, Clay. When I noticed you grab that, you had a really nice balance right there. And for your documentary style, that's ready for you to rip and roar.
Right.
And just some of these have started shipping. So mainly the accessories in the production pack light. So the top handle, the XLR, the blade, and the base plate. We're literally getting them in-house at the moment. They're going through quality being checked. So hopefully they'll be out very, very soon. The full production pack with the top plate, that Clay had, and the battery adapters. We're getting there ever so slightly. Obviously, these kind of delays with the world economy hitting us with one little screw not being available. So very, very close. And obviously, that's the thing. We want to get you guys rigged out, production ready. So watch this space. I think at this point, then, we can open it up to some questions. I've seen a few questions firing in throughout the session. So feel free, guys, to ask any questions, and we'll hang around and answer as many as we can.
I think one thing to keep in mind here when you're shooting on Raptor, this is, you are able to shoot with high frame rates a data-rich file here. But remember, we're also doubling our frame rates. So if you are doubling your frame rates, you are going to increase your data footprint as well. This is definitely something where maybe shooting 8K 24 at LQ, or maybe 8K with that 2K ProRes or 4K ProRes would allow you to keep your media very efficient while still using all of that sensor. And it's just a great way to media management. You have so many more options now. Remember, LQ at 8K or MQ at 8K is often where both Clay and myself and Johnny, aren't you shooting a lot of your stuff at?
Yeah, I mean, LQ, if I'm doing anything for kind of online web, and then, when things start to get a bit more serious, MQ is kind of where I'm really kind of happy to be kind of sitting, really.
Yep.
Let's have a look. A few questions starting to come in.
Oh, somebody wants a free Komodo. Me too.
Here we go. So where is the USB-C port on the Komodo? So on the Komodo, there isn't one natively, but through the use of, I think, James, you actually got it on there. Is it the link adapter? Yes. Yeah. So the link adapter, I'll just get you full screen there, James. 1 second. Oh, that is Clay. There we go. So James is showing the link adapter there, goes on the top of the camera, and it gives you that USB-C output that you can either use to connect to an Android or an iPhone, or James has the gigabit Ethernet adapter on there as well.
This guy right here. And I've found that it's nice to have the cabled option, right? Because when we're doing live events, nothing's more makes me give that warm and fuzzy than having a nice cabled connection. But there are times where I want to unclip and maybe go handheld. As long as it's still on the network, you still have the wireless connection. It's just not nearly going to be as fast for doing the offload or anything like that. I think that's where you definitely would want to have that hard connection. And I think we were saying it was a 1-to-1 if we were using this new 5 gigabit adapter. So we shot for a half hour, about a half hour to offload. The card readers would be faster than that. That's still the fastest, but I think a 1-to-1 is a pretty good ratio there for shoot to offload it.
Yeah.
Let's have a look. All right. Did I see you had a V-mount expander? Yes, so what Clay was showing off there is obviously the camera has a micro V adapter to get you some nice compact small batteries for those small rigs. But if you want to get some red bricks on there or some larger 200-watt batteries, that's what this adapter does. It can pass power through to the top plate for the aux outputs. But yeah, I'll get Clay up full screen there again, just so you can get a little bit of a teaser as to kind of what that plate looks like. Also, gold mount will be available, again, coming very soon. But just wanted to show you guys that we're getting very close to those full production Raptor setups.
And I don't know if you heard it, there's no wiggle or jiggle or clicking on that. It feels like you're clicking into a full-size battery mount. I know Johnny and I looked at this. It's an integrated camera, right? It's not like a modular plate or anything. No, it feels like it's all in one camera. And I think the benefit here is I have customers asking me, do I wait for Excel or do I move forward with that production kit? It feels like an all-in-one camera. I just have the option to break it down. I would not have the option to break down that XL any smaller. So really, if that's a benefit to you, you can go ahead and move forward with that right now.
Totally. And with the multiple tie points and all the different parts of the accessories and the way it's been form fitted to it, feels like one solid camera once the accessory package is all put together.
Here's another one on some rigging. Is the monitor limited to the top of the camera? And no. So with the DSM-C3 monitor, it was actually quite a nice blend. You get a camera that is a single cable to power it, monitor data, but then also because it's that single cable solution, as Clay is showing there, you can take it off, and with a 39-inch cable or a 10-inch cable or some other lengths, you can then move it kind of wherever you want. So it's really like a really nice blend of both of the monitors that were available for DSM-C2 with the direct attach and then the cabled option.
I do want to be clear here. It's the 10-inch or the 39-inch RMI from us that is partnership with Small HD. I have seen customers where they've grabbed another USB-C in the bag, and really it does not fit. It does not allow for that locking on both the screen and on the RMI itself. And this is a really quick way where you can do critical damage to your screen. I would advise you guys and gals, get the 10-inch or the 39-inch if you do want to do anything with the gimbal or with a little bit more cable real estate.
Few more questions. Oh, can the DSM-C3 monitor work with Komodo? So no, not on this. So that's just due to the fact that we've got 7.4 volt batteries on the back, and it's just not got enough juice in the system to be able to go up and power those pins. So not currently.
And I apologize that this is powered off, but this is the Komodo with the Small HD. And if I want to integrate the little control cable going into the EXT port, then I could use this as a touchscreen. For myself personally, I've just been using the Red Control app or the touchscreen right here on the top of the camera and save the additional cable. But that would be your best option. And that would work with not only the 5 inches, but also the 7-inch Cine 7 or the Porta-Keys monitor. All three of those are approved for the Komodo.
See if there's any other questions. James, any other questions jumping out to you there?
This one from Jared, just wanted to see any progress with the 12G SDI burnout problem from Red Komodo. Now, if this is the option to burn in the LUT, that is something that is an option, right? I think that's one of the benefits. Do you want it log or do you want it with the LUT burnt in?
I think this is due to some people experiencing their SDI issues.
Oh, okay.
So this is something. Go ahead, Clay. I think you were going to.
I was just going to say, if you just follow the safe procedure when using your SDI port, you're not going to have that problem. So it's it is a thing that exists, but it's also a thing that's very easily remedied.
I mean, Clay's made a short video on it, so go back on the YouTube channel to watch that. And we do also have an article. Just to kind of summarize it, I guess, very, very quickly, ensure your monitor has power. Basically check that it's turning on before you plug in that SDI, and then the reverse when you're then removing everything. So basically some of the issues
we've got a link coming in the chat too that everybody can follow if you are interested in preventing damage to your SDI.
On, and then now connect it. It's really that, and then the inverse of that on the way out. It's something that you would see across industry-wide, right? There's other camera manufacturers, and they have the same exact article with the same exact protocol. It is just a best practice industry-wide.
Somebody's asking about autofocus progress. I've been using it this whole episode, so it's not working too terribly.
I've actually been having really good success, right? Here's my Raptor right over here off frame. I can actually do autofocus right here on the touchscreen, or now I'm doing it right here on the app. I really liked being able to hand someone my phone and say, hey, just I'm a rocker, I'm a mover, and they can just tap, tap, tap on the phone or tap, tap, tap on the touchscreen if you don't want to have continuous. And it's a really great, it's actually kind of cinematic, and you can change the speed. And let's not forget the Red Control app has a bevy of different features here where you can control the lens, add additional discs. Really, it's been great so far.
All right. Give a last chance for any other questions. Get a few more fired in. Seeing a few XL questions. We don't know either. Watch this space. Obviously, we've got it on red.com. So definitely watch this space.
Yeah.
I think there was a couple of questions earlier on the really cool shootwear that Johnny and I and Clay are wearing. Just know that is going to be added to red.com. Sometimes it's the little things like having a hoodie with the latest red, you know, skull on there. We are going to add those to red.com. You will be seeing them shortly. And I'm really liking the gunmetal gray here, so I don't have the white logo floating through the set here. It's been really nice to have some new shootwear.
Somebody was also asking about going even slower on the shutter down to 1 frame per second. And I know that's something that's being looked at, but feel free to send some emails in for stuff like that. If you're really looking for a feature, or you and your buddies are like, we just need it, send an email in and we'll see what happens.
Timelapse, Undercranking, these were feature requests, right? These were emails that we got earlier on the feature request board. So just know, yeah, Clay's direction there was perfect. It helps us when we really have, you know, a community of users asking for this rather than just one person. So please feel free to send that feedback. We love that.
I saw one come in. Someone was asking, can we please have the ability for Red Control to save stills to the iOS camera roll? And you already can. So you either go into the, I think it's in the color panel. There is an option there, or you can, James is showing it there. Let me get you full screen there, James. And you can show it. There we go. So just in that section, you've got a little camera button, and that saves straight to your camera roll. Same in the Red Control Pro app. It just goes straight there. So you can also assign it to a quick button as well in the app. So super, super easy there.
And this actually works on playback as well. I was finding it really nice to just be in the Red Control app. I'm confirming that I got the shot that they needed. I can scrub through the playback, and that's the logo. That's the medium close-up we were going for. I hit that little photo roll. I didn't pull the card out. I didn't have to do anything. I do want to be clear here. That's only MJPEG, right, that is being sent over to you. It is not the full R3D quality, but it is very nice to just be able to go to whoever the creative director is or your focus puller and say, yes, this is what I was going for. This was the look. And you're seeing not the greatest shots, but those are my fingers that were just live right out of camera while doing the live stream. I literally just did that and went straight to my photo roll. So if you have a shared folder, that's something where maybe Clay is actually seeing that as it populates that shared folder as well.
Totally. And I saw somebody ask if you can use Red Control Pro on DSMC2 cameras, which is not possible because it's the protocol version 2.
Yep. And this Red Control Pro app is available now. So either you can go on to our Instagram and there's like a link page on there, you can get it, or I'm sure one of our team will very momentarily put that link in the chat for you so you can download the app, only for iOS, iPad, and then also macOS as well. I see we've got Mikhail in the chat.
Yeah.
Who's been mastering the app. There he is.
Clay, I'm going to bring this one up here. It's a question about auto exposure with doing time lapses. I haven't been doing anything auto. I've been pretty much setting it for knowing what it's going to get brighter or darker, throwing on some big NDs. And if I go back to that day to night shot that I did earlier, I'm not doing anything. I'm using the dynamic range of that incredible sensor later and then doing that in post.
Exactly. I would suggest doing some tests to establish how much dynamic range you're going to need or exactly where you want that dynamic range. As we've shown in some of our other, when it was solitary series, you might actually want to ND a little bit and be a little bit more exposed in different, like basically find a balance where that ND is going to help you retain those highlight details as the sun comes up, but you're in a place where you're eliminating as much noises as possible in the shadows during the nighttime portion of the shot, but we don't have any automatic exposure bracketing built into the camera.
I think that's where you just rely on the 17 plus stops of dynamic range and all of that ability. And you can do, once again, I've done creative things in post where maybe you're doing a high pass and a low pass and you're blending the two, right? There's so many other creative things that you can do once you've got that capture. I think the key thing there was bringing some NDs. I have a really nice set that's 2, 3, 4, all the way to 6 stops. And depending on what we're doing, middle of the day, into night, it's always great to have those in your bag.
Or and if people want to send emails to us, you can send them to redtechlive@red.com.
I was also going to say that KOMODO one, I was using the RF to EF adapter with that built-in little ND reel. So that alone, right? I did a 2+ mile hike. I didn't want to bring the Raptor. KOMODO with the built-in RF to EF with ND was really that godsend to help me keep that time lapse going and not lose the cloud highlight detail.
All right.
All right. Any other questions here, guys, you see?
Variable ND filter and adapter. That is on the horizon.
All right.
On with the Red Control Pro app, yes, it will eventually be a paid app. This is what the beta's for, to learn and understand what the features and functions are, get everything working. So yeah, it won't be a free app like with Red Control.
To Tony and Nick, I would not be holding out for a firmware update to increase your Komodo frame rate. I've asked the question many a times too. This is a hardware limitation within the sensor, and Jared and others have said that before. Unfortunately, it's kind of why DSMC2 can't do new frame rates. It's hardware based. Some of these things are just going to be better with the newer and the more robust systems like the Raptor, and that's what it's designed to be, a high frame rate camera. However, we are seeing in productions where you have your A and your B, or maybe it's all Komodos, right? It's just when you want to do that high frame rate, that is where Raptor is going to win out, and Komodo is going to win out for the global shutter and the smaller form factor. Both record to red code. You're going to be able to color match, you know, very, very easily. And even with your DSMC2 cameras as well, because remember, we're all recording to red code. You just unfortunately don't have the nice new app that connects them all on the Wi-Fi. That's just not possible.
Awesome.
Question from Robin. I'm guessing this is in relation to either V-RAPTOR or Komodo, increasing the pre-record time. So this it actually works differently to DSMC2. So on DSMC2, the pre-record wrote to the card, and that had benefits and also some negatives. It was constantly writing to your card. If you were doing pre-record, you couldn't cancel it because it had already written to the card. Whereas on V-RAPTOR and Komodo, there's a small internal cache on the camera that it's writing that pre-record to. When you press record, it then dumps it to the card, which is very good for card longevity. It just means that obviously we haven't got as big of a cache. So if you want to extend that pre-record time, you can drop down in resolution or drop down in frame rate to extend that. But due to how we're currently running it with the internal cache, currently there's no way of getting beyond that. If you're doing 8K 120, for example, you're kind of limited to those 1 or 2 seconds or 3 seconds, which for most of the time at 120, if it's a animal or, you know, clay landing a trick or something, that kind of 3-second window is generally where we found a lot of people like to sit. Going beyond that, 30 seconds of pre-record at 8K 120 was a little bit overkill, especially when you consider how much data is going through that at 8K 120.
And the other benefit of this, you know, non-caching to the media and doing it internally is you can cancel a pre-record. How many times, Clay, have you been set up with pre-record and then they go, hey, we need you in a different position, and you have to burn that shot. You have to, that shot has already begun. Very nice where maybe you accidentally hit record right before you were going to go on a camera move. You can hold down record, cancel that pre-record. Like it's an epiphany the first time you do it. But very, very nice to not have to waste that shot and just cancel that if you need to.
Yep. That it is. And you know what? I got to jump in, guys, because they'll just keep going and we can't. We got to end this stream.
Yep.
Thank you all so much for coming out and spending some time with us. It's been great sharing information with you. And you can totally email us if you have additional questions beyond this, and we'll see you on the next one.
Told baby girl, she gotta do it with a purpose. Had me down about the mirror, man. I heard that she a virgin, sheesh. And I've been in the gym all week. Heavy bars, that's how I'ma drop the gyms y'all need. I've been working on his body for the beach all winter. Yoga and Pilates, watch me keep my figure. Snap back like Beyonce, kill the beats like Jigga. Share the vision, but not everybody see my picture. Like the circle got smaller, but the dream got bigger. All those things that you said you didn't mean, I get it. Oh, you really wanna come back to the team? I'm listening, but life's different, and I'm